Nothing But the Truth. Hello, I'm Raj Chengappa of India Today and your host for Nothing But the Truth. Every week, I'll bring you insights and clarity on a major topical issue that matters to you without holding back on the truth. We are now in the age of AI, or artificial intelligence. That's what experts say. In 2023, there were several turning points in AI that have opened a whole new world, in which machine intelligence now complements human intelligence in ways that only science fiction had predicted earlier. With the introduction of ChatGPT, which I'm sure all of you all are familiar with, and other such AI models, the whole scenario of artificial general intelligence, or AGI, has been truly transformed. This morning on my computer, I asked a ChatGPT as to what makes it special than other modules before it was introduced. And of course, it's weird to do this, actually conduct an interview with the computer, and pat came its reply, even before a blink of an eye. It typed out, and I'm quoting it, "Compared to my predecessors, I have a deeper understanding of context, can generate more nuanced and complex responses, and possess a broader base of knowledge. Additionally, I can process images and have a more refined approach to problem solving and creative tasks." Now, close quotes on that. That was ChatGPT telling me. In fact, several experts say the big developments in AI recently have put the world on the brink of a technological revolution that would be more impactful than even the invention of the internet. That has, of course, already revolutionized all our lives. So to understand the impact, I'm delighted to introduce Srikanth Velamakanni, who's co-founder, group CEO, and vice chairman of Fractal Analytics. It is an Indian company. It's one of the largest and leading companies specializing in AI, recently declared a unicorn as well. Srikanth himself is an IIT Delhi and an IIM Ahmedabad product, and Fractal is now over 2 decades old. So, Srikanth, welcome to Nothing But the Truth.
Thank you, Raj. Glad to be here.
Let's begin by asking you a really fundamental question. And our audience is largely lay, so let's keep the jargon out of it. Wherever possible, let's make it simple. And AI has been with us for over 6 decades. When I talk of AI, I mean the overall artificial intelligence. With deep learning gathering momentum only in the past 3 decades, that's still 30 years. So what's the big breakthrough that has happened in this decade, especially with the coming of AGI, or artificial general intelligence, and what they call large learning modules? Both, by the way, sound like gobbledygook to a layperson. So I look forward to you explaining what is the big difference that has happened in the last 3 to 4 years when it comes to AI.
Wonderful, Raj. So AI has been around for more than 65 years. AI, the word artificial intelligence was coined in 1956 at a Dartmouth summer conference. And even 50 years after that, the same people who had met up in 1956, some of them had died, but the others met together in 2006. And they were still debating which way the world will go in terms of artificial intelligence. And the quest from 1956 and through to now has been about, can we build a machine that can mimic human intelligence, that can match or exceed human performance on a broad range of what I will call as cognitive tasks.
Okay.
And that is really the quest. Can a machine do things that a human can do, and can it exceed its performance? That's been the quest. Okay. Now, for the first 50 years, there was a lot of progress, and there were a lot of papers published, but there were basically 2 branches in which it was going. One where you could build rules, elaborate set of rules,
okay,
where you can say, if I want to play a game of chess, let me write a rule that if you make this move, which are the 3 best moves I can get by actually understanding the game of chess in detail.
We had that I remember Deep Blue, that program that beat the world champ at that time, and of course then he beat Deep Blue after that as well, if I remember that, in 2000
exactly.
Or before that. Yes.
1997, IBM built a machine called Deep Blue. It defeated Kasparov in a game of chess, but it was all about making an elaborate set of rules.
Okay.
Human beings are much smarter than just the rules. Because for every rule there is an exception to the exception. So there was a different kind of learning which mimics the human brain, which was about building what are these networks called as deep learning networks,
Right.
which are essentially like human neurons, but they are learning patterns in the data that they're seeing. So that was the new kind of learning technology that was developed in the 70s and 80s, but really came of age in the 2010 type of time frame.
Okay,
And
so
for the
let
last
me,
20
before I
years,
come to the final development, let me just quickly catch up with what you said. So when we started in 1956 or so, when artificial intelligence was defined by a few scientists, then we largely had what you call problem solving and rule-based or symbolic methods of deduction that was going on. I do remember there was also Eliza, that computer, Eliza Doolittle, a character
yes.
taken from, I think, George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, which became famous because people actually chatted with Eliza. And, it was able to answer questions, but, they even got emotionally bonded. And then you're saying, of course, the next thing was Deep Blue that came in, right? Which was your, what you call deep learning that was happening. So what is the latest now? We are looking at 4 or 5 decades of development on AI.
Yes. So all these technologies that you mentioned were all over the past, which were good, but then they would break, right? They would even mimic human intelligence a little bit, but
Right.
really, if you go 1 or 2 levels deeper, you will know that they're not, they're just simple dumb machines. But now what has happened is this new wave is a function of the technique that you talked about, right? Deep learning, which is mimicking more like how human beings and human brains learn.
Right.
And so the technique was different. But the second and third are most important. The data sizes, right? Huge data to learn from. So we started recording everything because computing became cheaper, storage became
Right.
cheaper. So we started recording everything, TV programs to internet and everything else, databases. So we started recording everything. So all this information was a machine could actually go through it and learn from it. And
Right.
second, to learn it, it requires a huge amount of computational resources. You need to put computing power behind it. And computing power is becoming cheaper and cheaper following what is called as Moore's law. So every year it becomes, half as cheap as the previous year. And
Right.
therefore, because it became so cheap, you could throw in a large amount of computational horsepower, you can bring in a large amount of data set, and you would need a better technique to learn from the data, which is the deep learning techniques.
Right.
You fuse them together, suddenly these models started to become very accurate. And then they started becoming more and more responsive to human feedback. Now, what's happened only the last 1 year is the emergence of these, what you already mentioned as large language models.
Right.
These learn very simply. Basically, give them a piece of text, let's say 2 paragraphs of text, it'll see what is the previous few words and what is the next word.
Right.
And then it'll try to predict it and then learn if it makes a mistake and then predict the next word. And by doing this elaborately over 10 trillion words,
Right.
it has learned, it has a compressed knowledge of the world inside the model.
Wow.
Now with that, it is able to answer questions like the one you asked in the morning, is because it is now has the compressed knowledge of the world. It understands language, it understands concepts, it has context, and it starts to now answer questions almost like a human. So in many fields, it is beating human performance quite handily, right?
Okay,
And
now
matching
let
exceeding
me
human.
let me just sum up what you said. Was the fact one was that you said large data bits, which if you translate that, every library across the world, every document that is available, these are then fed into it, including whatever you might have put down on your net and my net and everything else. It collects all that information. The second is the processing ability, which is a computer process. Now, let's just talk about that, okay, in the sense that before we come to the algorithms that determine your learning, when it comes to computing, I asked ChatGPT this morning and said, look, how many computers do you require to generate the kind of intelligence that you're giving me right now? Came with a very interesting answer. It said, it took a little while. You had to keep prompting it and say, no, don't give me thousands, give me this thing. It finally came to an answer that said 16,000 laptops that I'm using, which was a basic laptop, put together gives me some computing power that can do it. And secondly, very interestingly, it said that in terms of power that it uses in one day, it's equaling to lighting up 11,000 houses. Now, that's a lot of power that's a lot of computing power. Can you just break that down? Is that an accurate figure? Is that the kind of numbers that you're putting in terms of the computing power and the, let's say, electricity that you're using?
Yeah, one way to rough. I mean, these numbers are not publicly disclosed by OpenAI, which is the founder of maker
Right.
of ChatGPT. But you could roughly assume that it is about 100,000 what are called as H100s, right?
Wow.
And
What is
it's got two
H100? Tell me, what is the power of
H100s are
H100?
H100 are the latest processors
Right.
by NVIDIA, And these are called GPUs, graphical processing units. So
Okay.
between 10,000 to let's say 100,000, there's that somewhere in that ballpark are the number of processors they're using,
Wow.
which I think of it, each of them as a cluster of computers. So it's very large.
Right.
Second, they have 276,000 CPUs, computers.
Wow.
That is also somewhere is published. So if you put all of them together, think of this as something like the effect of 500,000 computers that are connected to each other,
Right.
trying to learn all of this stuff. So it's really, really vast amounts of processing power. It costs roughly $5 million. Just the computational cost of training it once is $5 million. And overall, OpenAI has spent billions of dollars in learning and training these models. And this would have been hundreds times that if you went back 10 years ago. So that was not even possible. Now we have capital, and therefore we can spend $1 billion and train these models to learn and mimic human behavior.
Now, interestingly, I mean, if you look at, when you're bringing up your own child, I have a son and a daughter, you're training them and every day teaching them, and they pick up. And then you begin to marvel at the human brain and the kind of, when you were talking of networks, I think of neural networks that we seem to have in our brains that are so wired that you can pick up information and do it. I'm told, and correct me if I'm on this one, and maybe you can expand on it, is that the way these computers work is what is called transformers or algorithms that are able to do predictive things. Earlier, if they just did a rule-based thing, here they were able to put together various combinations of data, and almost like human beings, say if you had to use a color like blue, and you had a definition, say, looking at an ocean, it will tell you what kind of blue that is, like human beings would say if we are going to describe the sky or something. Do tell us about what is the kind of intelligence that gets in, how do you all make it create this kind of data that almost sounds human when it puts it out?
Yeah, you mentioned the word transformer. So this was something that the researchers from Google developed in 2017 called the transformer architecture, and they released a paper which has become very seminal paper in this space called Attention is All You Need. And in that paper, they basically talk about this is still within the context of deep learning that we just spoke about, but it has a way of looking at if you give it a string of text, it looks at the words and it tries to predict the next word in a very flexible way, right? And that is the fundamental construct of these models: is take it a sequence of words, it pays attention to some of the words, and then says what is the most likely word to follow the next word. For example, I love ice, and then you stop. The most logical next word is cream, because I
Right.
love ice cream is probably the most common sentence in English once you
Right.
say I love ice,
Right.
right? So it is predicting that. And let's say it figures out that is wrong, then it learns from that input. And over time, it does this repeatedly
Right.
through this transformer architecture. And then it, in some ways, captures all the knowledge of the world in it by going through all the text. Think of all the Wikipedia pages, think of all the books,
Libraries,
all the
yeah.
archives, and it's
Right.
learning all that and then figuring out various concepts, things like it learns mathematics through this, it learns physics through it, it learns languages like Bengali and Hindi and Telugu. So it's doing all of that stuff in this process of going word by
Wow.
word and predicting the next word.
Now let's come to the uses. We do know that artificial intelligence is, long before what AGI came in, had begun to change our lives already. Whether it was on the Internet of Things, whether your own washing machine or the cell phone that you hold in your hand is driven a lot by AI. What is it, the quantum leap that has happened in terms of AI? If you look at some of the uses that have been there before and now, what is the big quantum leaps AGI brings, or any other form of artificial intelligence that is now being developed?
Yeah, wonderful. I think AI has been around for a long time and adding value to our lives. Most of the time, we have not been noticing. And that is the thing, that if AI is really good, it just looks like, yes, this product works. It's just cool technology, it works. You
Right.
don't really think of how it is learning, because you just expect it. For example, if you take a smartphone and see this camera feature, right? If you take, let's say, you want to do a portrait camera
Right.
picture, what it has to do is to figure out that some things are in the foreground, which it has to focus on, and something is in the background, it defocuses the background. So that is something that very good lenses do. But nowadays, all the cameras that come up that you have are actually doing this using AI. So the AI detects the scene, it figures out what is in the foreground, it focuses that, and it defocuses the rest using algorithms. And so now you just think that it's taking good pictures. You don't see that AI is actually making it happen. I'll give
Right.
you a second example. let's say you go to YouTube, right? And I'm sure most of the viewers here are using YouTube one way or the other.
Right.
And in YouTube, if you were to just go to a mode called incognito mode, you can sign out of YouTube, or you can go into incognito mode where it doesn't recognize, it doesn't use your past history. And then you see that the YouTube experience of using YouTube is really, really bad because it doesn't know what videos you like.
Right.
It shows you all kinds of crazy, stupid videos that you may not be interesting to you.
Right.
Whereas every day you use YouTube in the signed in mode, it gives you those precisely those good videos.
Right.
The problem is there are tens of billions of videos getting uploaded every day, and some algorithm has to filter that into saying which are the 5 videos that make sense to you, which should be
Right.
on your home screen. So this is how we've been using AI throughout. It's just getting more and more smart. Three things are happening. One is it is becoming more able to understand language, more flexible
Right.
language conversation, right? So entire AI has become more conversational, where you can ask questions,
Correct.
you
Yes.
can get answers, and even it's conversational, and it is becoming what is called as multimodal, which means that you can ask questions, you can give a picture, you can give a video. It took us all of this and make sense of it. It was
Right.
not there. This breakthrough wasn't there till last year. So this whole area of what is called as multimodal AI is becoming very big. And
Right.
second thing it's doing is it's becoming really, really more sharper, and its accuracy is going up a lot. So really, whatever was feeling like a little clunky last year is going to be much less clunky. So for example, translating French to German or French to Hindi, it's going to become a lot better, much fewer mistakes it's going to make.
Right.
And the result of this is that as human beings, we can be aided and augmented in everything that we do. We can do our tasks faster.
Now, coming when you talked of languages, a thought struck me, and the fact that India has over 100 official languages and dialects and everything else put together. My mother tongue is Kannada. My wife's mother tongue is Tamil. I don't know yours is Telugu or Tamil. I'm not familiar with the name that you have. Is it possible? Are we now looking at a scenario tomorrow that when you are speaking, my phone is automatically and instantly translating all the, if you're speaking a language that I don't understand, if you're traveling abroad in France, French, or German, I'm able to immediately understand. And then when I reply, that person is able to pick up. It's almost like a simultaneous translation. Are we seeing that in the next 6 months as a reality, or do we have to wait longer?
It's very close because the technology is there, right? The real-time translation is near perfect. The only thing is this whole user experience that you just mentioned, right? Where I'm speaking in, let's say, English, and you are actually hearing it in Kannada. That and in real time, that part of user experience design and the product design has not happened. But the underlying algorithms are fast enough, smart enough to be able to do this almost in real time right now. So I do expect that may not be 6 months, but in the 18 to 24 month, you will have those kinds of technologies where you can do flexible real-time translation. So already Google Translate does some of that stuff, right? Where you can talk in one language. And I was in Turkey, and I couldn't speak Turkish. I didn't realize that Turkey has so many people who don't at all speak English. So I was just speaking it in English, and the cab driver was understanding it in Turkish, and vice versa. So it was working near perfectly. It's not as real time as you would like. It's not that I'm speaking in, let's say, maybe in future you'll have my lip movements also match Turkish and so on. But that is not yet there. But soon enough, we will see that technology too. Already in many conferences, people are presenting in one language and the audience is hearing another language. So in curated settings, you can already achieve that.
Interestingly that you mentioned, because I now recall that Prime Minister Modi just last month, while he was addressing the Tamil Sangam from Kashi, he was speaking in Hindi. Simultaneously, the people who were listening to his program had it in Tamil with no human interface. I mean, it was automatically translating, and apparently translated perfectly. So that's one good example of it. But let's move to the other areas. One is, of course, you are asking it questions like I did this morning, and it is able to put down all the history. I can actually write my essay or article on this, and I do things that normally couldn't do. Let's look at the tasks that whether it is in health and agriculture, which are the big areas you think it would revolutionize in the coming months or years that's there.
Wonderful. I think to begin with, let's see what kinds of areas are most likely to get impacted. I think these sets of AI tools are actually doing whatever is cognitive and repetitive things much faster. Right. So anything that requires a lot of thinking and requires and generally repetitive, here AI algorithms start to do very well. And even the creative and repetitive activities like designing a poster, creative activities but repetitive activities, this is where you will see that AI starts to play a bigger and bigger role.
Right.
In terms of industries, healthcare is really up there, because think about, let's say, number of doctors and radiologists in the world. The healthcare need, let's say in India, the number of radiologists, 1 per 10,000 people. I think we have one radiologist for
Right.
every 10,000 people. We need way more than that. So how can we make sure that if you take an X-ray, that it is report, somebody is actually looking at the X-ray and telling you whether there is anything wrong with that X-ray. So can you detect tuberculosis in it, or can you detect COVID in it? Can you detect lung cancer, potential lung cancer in it, or pneumonia in it? These kinds of things are all going to happen where the machine will take the X-ray, but you will have a report that's automatically produced, and then the doctor can choose to look at the report and then add value to the report. But the report production should become automatic. So that's something that you will see more and more examples. So Cure.ai is one of those Indian companies that's doing an amazing job of detecting lung cancer, detecting TB, and so on. So that's one example.
Let's take,
Second thing,
sorry, finish. I was going to ask you about
please.
agriculture, but, and farmers, given the fact that 60% of our, people are engaged in farm, our population is engaged in farms or farming and agriculture. What is the revolution we can bring there? I mean, what changes do you see happening in that area?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've seen some very good demonstrations of is to be able to find out what are the diseases that crops have. So can you take a little picture of any crop and then be able to find out what kind of diseases they may be there, and therefore what fertilizer? Can you find out whether you have over fertilized the field, or which places of the farm have not received enough water? So these kinds of things can all happen through a combination of drone technologies and as well as AI. So it can survey the fields, it can give you recommendations. We can also see information. If farmers need information on pricing and so on, can they access all the pricing information so that they know exactly what to produce? Can they have a look at the land and see what are the best crops to produce on this land? So everything about the farming activity can potentially get revolutionized by AI. And already there are many companies and many state governments which are all working with farmers to enable something like this.
Now let's go to industry. We had seen the automation of production. We saw that cars could be assembled by artificial intelligence long before, and in fact, there's been a huge concern in terms of the replacement in terms of jobs, that whether AI would, firstly, of course, let's look at the positive side of AI before we come to some of the concerns that are there. In terms of industry alone, what are the kind of things that we can, and which industries do you think AI could really, the new kind of AI can really revolutionize the way we do business?
So this is across. So think of, I'll give you India's one of the largest sources of export revenue for India is the technology industry, IT services industry. And today, almost everyone is writing software code, programming using an AI assistant. So what it does is you basically think in English and you say, I want to write a computer program that can sort integers, or sort these columns. Or you can say, I want to write a computer program that can find out the next 5,000 prime numbers. If you just think in English, the code will get automatically produced. And more or less, it's really, really high quality code that's get produced. So what it is doing is everyone is using these coding assistants to write the software programs. And the entire software development lifecycle, not only for coding, but to do testing of software or to do documentation of software, AI is automatically doing that, which means that the productivity of the IT workers can dramatically increase. And that is what is happening in the IT industry. And that is, just as one of the largest exporters for India. Look at pharma industry. So entire drug discovery is becoming possible using generative AI and AI methods. So there are many new AI companies that have come up which are only doing drug discovery work.
Just give a little expansion of how it does that. What does it do, and how does it help in pharma?
Yeah. Yes. So drug discovery involves finding new molecules. For that, you need to understand, let's say, a disease molecule, a disease protein. For example, every disease eventually it boils down to figuring out a protein or a virus and the spike protein of that virus, and you have to build a medicine that can go and attach to that virus and somehow neutralize it. Right? For that, you need to understand the structure of the protein. Now, proteins are such small molecules that the three-dimensional structure of the protein, because you're finding a lock and a key, right? So you need to understand the three-dimensional structure of the protein so you can build the key that goes and attaches to the lock. That is for that requirement, you need to know the exact structure of the protein. And these are such small molecules that you need X-ray crystallography to see the dimension to find the three-dimensional view of it. And that takes a whole PhD of one PhD student. So what a company called DeepMind did last year, in actually July 2022, is to release the entire three-dimensional structure of 200 million proteins using AI.
Wow.
So it's fascinating. Now, once you know the three-dimensional protein, now you have to see what kind of a molecule that you have can match that. Right? So most of the drug discovery is about finding these kinds of molecules and then seeing which of those are safe enough and effective enough in actually solving the disease or the problem. So this entire chain can be done using AI plus human beings rather than just by the current research methods. And therefore, you're seeing whole new companies getting started ground up that are doing pharma, drug discovery, and many of the existing big players also using this to do drug discovery.
Now come to another area, and this is creative. Journalism is not a creative field in that sense. We do our writing, actually get facts and collect and put it together. But take a novelist, or actually, my son is studying music, and one of the things he did was to look at artificial intelligence in music, generating music, because he does a lot of this computer-generated music. And interestingly, he found that when he sampled that, they did give him ideas, but AI, when it came to actual creative processes, you had to work, the human interface had to be very critical. So while it gave you a lot of tunes that were there and helped you enable to speed up things, the creative force was still lying with the human being. How accurate is that assessment? He's, of course, just in a second year of his degree and studying music, but what is your sense of where creativity and AI will head to?
Yeah. So I think if creativity is defined as the human performance that underwent the production of something, so creativity is always going to be in the realm of human beings in that sense. But if you look at any creative activity, there are a lot of repetitive tasks. And if you can actually fuel the imagination of the creator and speed up their work, you can actually produce amazing works of art, right? So amazing works of art, music, and so on. So what you are seeing already, I mean, most of the latest musicians and artists, etc., are already using AI. It's almost irresponsible to not use AI to do something like this, right? Because it's frankly, it can dramatically improve your output. Now, creativity is also a game of volume, right? You produce many things and a few things are good. Not everything is great. So in that sense, also AI can produce these options. So it can take a set of, let's say you wanted to produce a music that models a certain style of artist, and then you have your own lyrics, and you want to see, can you fuse this together? Or you want to say, I want to fuse some folk music of Indian folk music with some jazz music, and let's see what does the fusion look like. If you want to experiment with these kinds of things, AI is going to help you in doing that. If you want to produce the latest a painting, already people are producing all kinds of logos and company names and baby names. I have a colleague in my office who recently had a baby, and he went through ChatGPT to because his astrologer said you have to start the name with an S and something, and now he had to come up with good ideas, and they also sound modern but also start with S. So he went to ChatGPT, and after a couple of hours of interrogating ChatGPT, he found the name for his baby. Now, this is something that would have taken days and weeks of fighting and conversation to figure out what his baby name could be. But now people are doing that. So I would say that creative professions, there is a huge scope for AI augmenting creativity. It will not replace, because as human beings, we like human production. We don't like machine production, and we don't think it is creative. So it's going to be human, but assisted by models.
Now let's come to the flip side, which is the peril side. There's a lot of promise that AI holds, but there's also peril. And one of the big concerns is the fact that you can automate a lot of these jobs means job losses. Where do you stand on this? That that machines will begin to replace humans, and humans will run into issues in terms of having jobs, and that could create its own tensions, especially in a country like India, which is going to produce 1 billion workers by 2030, the largest workforce that is going to join the world workforce. And if they are not equipped or get displaced because of AI and machines coming into place, that's going to cause huge social and other problems that we would face.
it is a very, very important problem, and a problem that the Indian government is also thinking of very actively. I think we have to be concerned that employment employment growth that we all are depending on, right? So last, if you look at the world at large, I think there is no employment growth because the working age population is not increasing across the world. Only India is producing net new employ. I mean, almost India
Right.
is the largest source of new people coming into the workforce right now. And if AI comes in and says, you will need to, everything can become faster and cheaper and better. So instead of something requiring 10 people to do, you only need 5 people to do, right? Because everyone is 100% faster.
Right.
Then what happens to the 5 people who are getting released? And what happens to all the other 50 people who are now coming into employment? Can we really grow our employment at the pace at which we want it to grow so that India continues to grow? I think the answers are not easy because as AI technology gets better and better, more and more capital is flowing into it, and it is replacing and augmenting human labor in a significant way, thereby reducing the need for human labor. And it is not something that we can easily solve for. It's not something India can alone solve it because the technology is global. It's going to spread. So what we can do as a nation is to prepare for this kind of a change. Number one, we can do is let's at least embrace AI in a significant way.
Right.
Government can use a lot of the AI. They can do that. They can certainly encourage industry to use AI. They can skill the workforce and prepare the workforce for the disruption, and they can regulate in such a way that AI can grow nicely. But I think the risks of employment are very real, and we don't have great solutions. But it's not a stoppable. It's not something we can stop. Ever since industrial revolution started in the 1700s, we've seen that every time technology comes in, it takes some space that the human labor is taking, and it just then releases human beings to do the more imaginative, newer things. It will happen this time too, where it'll free up and new industries will pop up and world will continue to grow. But in that transition, there are some risks involved, which is something that we have to worry about as a country.
I think you mentioned IT industry, which is our largest exporter and continues to be so. The fact that we were the back office of the world, software generators and everything else. And I do remember our conversation 3-4 years ago when you talked to the fact to go towards knowledge-based rather than just adding, doing the back office thing so that we become part of the board in a company, advising people on strategy and everything else. How can AI, we are highly dependent on the IT sector for generating jobs and for value and everything else. How does our IT sector need to transform itself to cash in on this huge potential and at the same time provide employment and income to people?
Absolutely. I think firstly, it's something that the IT industry cannot resist. It is something that is a fait accompli as far as India is concerned, Indian IT industry is concerned. So what we have to do is to embrace it fully. I think first they can do is to completely reimagine how they're solving problems and all the work that they do in tech, whether it is software development, it is testing, it's documentation, it is all the entire cycle of working with a client. They have to see how can they reimagine with AI, and because of which they will free up talent. But they can also go and capture huge amounts of new tech spends that are coming. Think of any big company around the world, given how much techification is happening of the world. Nobody is reducing their tech spend. So companies, clients, governments will continue to increase tech spends because tech is becoming an important part of our lives.
That's an interesting
What
word,
they have
tech
to do,
spends. Tech
yes.
expense, yes, but tech spends, that's a good coinage. Yeah, go ahead.
And what the IT industry has to do is to go and attach itself and address the new tech spends that will happen. And that is how IT industry can actually continue to grow and continue to employ people while recognizing that some of these productivity improvements are going to be real, and because of which they will have to reskill their workforce.
A quick thing about your own company. I know you were working at the cutting edge of AI. What is the kind of things you have seen while dealing with issues? You work with some of the largest global companies that we know of, whether it's Google or you need to mention the names. But what is it that you have tried to do in yours? Which are the areas that you feel huge potential when you work on, particularly from the Indian point of view?
Yes, absolutely. So I think we have seen a huge explosion in interest in terms of using AI. So while AI has been interesting for many years, it's really taken off, especially with this new generative AI, the chatbots kind of thing. So now ChatGPT is the brilliant technology demonstration. it doesn't solve your real world problems for enterprises, especially enterprise. They can use that kind of intelligence in solving their problems, like getting to know their customers better, predicting customer behavior, or reducing their operational expense and making themselves more productive, or inventing and investing new products that are very successful that meet customer demands, or make better strategic decisions around what companies to buy, or where to invest, etc. So they can make all these decisions using AI, and they have been, we have been working with some of the fortunate to be working with some of the largest companies in the world. So we are seeing a huge interest in explosion in interest. What we are doing also is to invest significantly in R&D, because we see a huge demand for this. Tech is moving very fast, but we have seen nothing yet. There's a lot more to come. So we are investing significantly in R&D. So we have built a grounds up India platform for image generation. You may have seen like ChatGPT is for language. Mid Journey is for images.
Wow.
So Fractal has built an image generation platform called Imagine AI, which basically it handles every Indian language, whether it's Marathi or Gujarati or Hindi, and it can produce beautiful images, Indian images for India. So this is one of the R&D efforts that Fractal has done, and which we hope to release in the next couple of weeks to the world. And therefore, there's a lot of R&D going on. There's a lot of problem solving going on, and we do see that this is such a huge opportunity for Fractal in general that we have to maximize. We have been building this business for a long time, but we see a huge opportunity for us to leapfrog and in terms of what kind of problems and how big we can be as a company.
Now, you're talking of images, and very interesting, this is the final point I'm going to ask you is, while there's a lot of good work that is going on, there is also the huge danger of AI from deep fakes, which we've experienced recently. It's been in the news. India Today magazine also put it on the cover recently, the problem of deep fakes, as well as cyber frauds. So where do you stand in terms of, there was a lot of AI people, experts and developers who said we need to put a halt on AI. There are huge dangers. It could cause immense damage to humankind. Where do you stand on this debate in terms of, well, of course, the perils probably are very clear, it shouldn't happen, but overall in terms of innovation and the speed and what we need to, what are the guardrails we need to put up for that?
Yeah, there are dangers, because especially AI in defense is a huge danger, right? AI used for autonomous weapons is huge danger. So drones with extra intelligence which can be goal directed, can do a lot of damage around the world, or drone, or bigger those drones, or killer drones and so on. So there are autonomous weapons which are AI enabled, which are very dangerous. There is dangers in cybersecurity. Almost every cyber crime right now, and the threat actors, the ones who are making the attacks, and the people who are defending, are both using much more AI models right now. So there is that danger of more and more cybersecurity risks and data thefts and so on that could happen, and ransomware attacks and so on. That's the second one. And the third thing is this whole deep fake thing, right? Which is essentially, can there be ID theft? So people can clone your voice can be cloned with 3 seconds of your voice.
Wow.
So just 3 seconds of your voice sample, and anybody can clone it, and then somebody can call as Raj and say, hey, you know what? You can call your team and say, send me $10,000 into my account, and then it turns out to be somebody else's account altogether. So these kinds of frauds can take place because your voice, your video, and your style, mannerisms, your knowledge, everything can be cloned. And that is really one of the dangers, which we have to build what is called a responsible AI filters to make sure that this is not happening. For example, if somebody were to clone a celebrity voice, let's say you want to clone Barack Obama's voice, right. If you put a voice sample into some of these tools, they will ask the person whose voice it is to verify that they're okay with it. And only then it produces the voice sample.
I think Anil Kapoor had that thing where he had his whole mannerisms, voice and all that patented recently, if I remember, the famous Indian actor of yesteryears, and of course continues to act now. Yeah, but that's very interesting. Where do you stand on this issue of whether AI should be developed further or put the brakes on now? Where do you stand on that debate?
I think my own sense is that it's unstoppable. The path of technological progress is unstoppable. Only if everybody in the world comes together and says, look, like a nuclear non-proliferation treaty kind of a thing, it's possible. And given the dynamics of this are different from an NPT or something like that. So it is highly unlikely that this kind of collaboration can happen where we will stop. So the progress will happen. What we can do is to be in tune with the progress and put sufficient guardrails in every country, collectively come together and put sufficient guardrails so that research can happen. But when somebody is launching a product that others can use to do bad things, this is rigorously tested and approved. Like pharma companies have to test their drugs before they are released to the market. So it's similarly, AI companies should get approval so that before they launch anything that is very powerful that can potentially damage the world, they have to go through the same approval process. So that is a kind of a regulatory framework that might actually work for India and the world.
Finally, one quick word from you. In the near future, what will we see come out of AI by 2030? That's about 5 years, or even the next year. What is the big thing that we will see?
So, 2030, I think we will have AGI, artificial general intelligence, which essentially is AI is matches and exceeds human performance in almost everything.
Wow.
Right? That we will reach that point, I think, before 2030. But if you take a very short-term view, let's say next 1 year view, I think the most important, impressive thing that we will all start to see is this thing called multimodality. You're already seeing some aspects of that, where AI can see, hear, listen, and read, and all of it takes an image, it takes a video, it takes text, and takes all of that and makes sense of the world and answers and questions and does things for us in what are called as agents, right? So these are multimodal agents. So they can take all the inputs in the world like human beings. We can see the room, we can see the lights, we can see the video, audio, and then we can make decisions. We can set up a goal and accomplish tasks. So these agents are the new exciting thing, which you give it a goal, it goes and accomplishes that goal, and it navigates the world environment in accomplishing the goals. So these multimodal agents are really the future of AI in the next 12 to 18 months.
Well, it looks like sci-fi. This is a new kind of a chatbot that has been literally physically being seen out there. And the fact that you mentioned that by 2030, you're going to see AI actually overtake human intelligence. That's something for all of us to ponder on. But Srikanth Velamakanni, thank you so much for your insights on the power of AI. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Raj.
And for those of you who want to know more, you can read the latest issue of India Today that has 16 experts, including Srikanth, who have articles on different aspects of AI and how you could be impacted by them. Thank you for listening to this episode of Nothing But the Truth. I look forward to having you with me next week. Nothing but the truth.